Hey, what's going on, Flix Talkers? Welcome back to another movie review. This time it is a spoiler review for Spider-Man No Way Home. It is the third for the Peter Parker, played by Tom Holland, Marvel film that we just got. It was delayed due to the pandemic, so I think a lot of people were excited to check this one out, especially as a lot of movies are being delayed next year. I think we were all kind of in fear if this one was going to get pushed back, but it kind of met that threshold of cementing itself in the end of 2021. So once again, this is a spoiler review, so you are warned that I will be talking everything that I liked and disliked about Spider-Man No Way Home, as well as ranking this in the trilogy of Tom Holland's Peter Parker. So stick around to the end for that. But before we do get into it, if you do like content like this, let me know by liking the video. It's the best way to support the channel, and it does spread these videos out to those that aren't subscribed. And if you yourself aren't subscribed, consider hitting that subscribe and bell notification down below to always get alerted about content like this. All right, Flix Talkers, so I will go over my pros, starting off with this movie takes place directly after Far From Home. And that was actually a very, very fun one for me, as it had one of my favorite villains introduced into the Spider-Verse, Mysterio, played by the legendary Jake Gyllenhaal. Yep, I am a Jake Gyllenhaal fan, so once I saw that and his portrayal of Mysterio, I was extremely pleased of how the execution was. But he is now deceased, and I say that in quotes because this guy is a master of mirrors, I will say that. And in a perfect Marvel world, I would love to have this guy back in another MCU film, if possible. So we do get to see him at the beginning exposing Peter Parker, Tom Holland's Peter Parker. I'm going to just keep saying the actor's name and which Peter Parker there are, because obviously, if you're watching this, you know, spoilers, that there are 3 Spider-Mans now. And we have to deal with this conflict and turmoil that comes along with being a vigilante. It was awesome to see J.K. Simmons come back into the Spider-Verse as J. Jonah Jameson. Say that 3 times. I cannot do it. I will not attempt it. To head off the Daily Bugle or the Daily Fix, I was kind of trying to figure out what it was called, because in the movie it said the Daily Fix, but if you look back at the trailers, it says the Daily Bugle. So it's kind of interesting. I liked his Alex Jones type of character, where he's very eccentric and pretty much doesn't care about the evidence or the context at hand. He just wants to put out this clickbait stuff, and he points his finger at Tom Holland's Spider-Man being a murderer. So once again, I like seeing the after effects of everyone after their neighborhood Spider-Man. Once beloved and revered, part of the Avengers, now he's public enemy number 1. And this really throws a wrench in the machine, at least for Peter Parker, Tom Holland's Peter Parker, and his band of friends, including Aunt May, Happy, and everyone that he's kind of gone to school with. We also get to see his teachers treating him a certain way. So that was interesting to see, as well as him being demeaned and kind of diminished to this cancel culture. You know, once they pull out their phones and they're all recording him and labeling him once again a murderer. Some believe that he is innocent. Some are believing Mysterio's lies. So I thought that was very, very interesting. It was almost emotional at times, especially when you saw Tom Holland's Peter Parker walking in with MJ and they're holding hands because they are a couple now, as you guys saw from the last film. And just the scrutiny and different signs holding up Peter Parker's face with the devil horns, and you know, he was being canceled. He was really being canceled. So I liked seeing something that we do in real life, IRL, implicated into a movie that I really do like. Now, next up was a character cameo that we saw, and I think a lot of people were kind of speculating that this guy was going to be in it. Charlie Cox as Daredevil. Now, I will say this, I'll be completely honest, I didn't catch a lot of the Marvel shows once they were going on, different seasons and whatnot. I gotta go back and check that out. I had not caught this Daredevil, but I know he's a fan favorite, and a lot of people were predicting he was in here. He was in here, and once he showed up on screen with his walking stick, because he is blind, people were cheering and rooting in the crowd, and that's awesome. This is fanfare. This is all fanfare. And a week ago, we got the word from Kevin Feige that if Daredevil was going to be in the MCU, Charlie Cox would play him. And hey, lo and behold, he was introduced in this film. And that was cool. Even though it's a character that I know nothing about, the only movie that I did see with Daredevil was the old school one with Ben Affleck, who surprisingly had Happy in it as well. And honestly, I don't really remember that film. I don't really think I enjoyed it too much because it just didn't stick with me for whatever reason. But I hear that this Daredevil portrayal by Charlie Cox is a great one, so I might have to go back and check him out. Also, a big pro of mine was seeing Doctor Strange, Stephen, talking to Peter Parker, Tom Holland's Peter Parker, once again, and just kind of Peter pouring his heart out, saying that his life, as well as his friends' lives, not getting into college is all his fault. And he's asking Doctor Strange, you know, kind of pouring his heart out if he can kind of concoct this spell to change that. But along the way, you see it in the trailer once again, the spell being altered, and that's what kind of opens up these multi-dimensions of different villains kind of coming in. I thought that was cool, the explanation. Yeah, it got a little quirky and clunky at times, but I kind of liked seeing all of that. Also, we get to see a quick glimpse of Wong, who we saw in Shang-Chi. Oh, sorry, spoiler if you have not seen Shang-Chi, guys. He does show up and he does kind of have a pivotal moment, especially in the end credits scene of that film. But he's introduced as someone that was kind of, they passed the torch to him because it was explained that Doctor Strange did disappear in the blip. So for 5 years, he was gone. I hate calling it the blip. I'm just going to call it the snap. And that's the reason for the pass of power to Wong. But once again, it was a quick cameo and I like seeing him. I like Wong. I do like Wong. So the more we get to see of him, the merrier. All right, now that epic bridge scene that you guys see, that whole traffic scene where we were introduced to our Doc Ock, Alfred Molina, and I loved seeing, I just love Marvel's CGI de-aging. It is so flawless and so clean. So once again, seeing Doc Ock was amazing, especially since he is one of my favorite villains in the Spideyverse. And just his interactions with Tom Holland's Peter Parker once he figures out that, hey, this ain't my Parker, this ain't my Peter Parker. I thought that was a very, very cool interaction. It seemed very, very natural and fluid. And it was just a cool action scene overall. Also, that quick scene that we get to see of Doc Ock taking the nanotechnology. Once I saw that kind of just evolving, the nanotechnology just spreading all through Doc Ock's tentacles, it was amazing. I was fanboying inside because that's exactly how the nanotech would work, but it didn't last that long. It was just a very, very cool fanfare to see. And of course, another big fanfare that people did love, my audience at least. People were cheering once we saw Green Goblin's explosive ball. I don't know what it's called, but his explosive pumpkin ball or whatever. That's the best way I can describe it. People were cheering, just hearing his voice. I think Green Goblin is such an iconic character, especially played by Willem Dafoe. He's the only one to me that can really play it and hold it over all of these decades and still get a huge crowd reaction from young and old. So I think that was awesome, the introduction to those different characters in the same scene, because they are part of the Sam Raimi trilogy that we did get. So I think the nostalgic factor holds very, very true into that scene, and they executed it perfectly. All right, now next up is the story that Doctor Strange tells Tom Holland's Peter Parker, hey, you got to retrieve these bad guys coming through. We got to kind of trap them in this vault, which is underground in the Sanctum Sanctorum, and we just got to send them back home. That was kind of the main objective. So I like that. I like when there's a little bit of structure. I was really hoping that this movie was going to have some structure in the 2-hour and 30-minute runtime roughly of what it was, because I think a lot of our fears were that this movie was just going to be so cluttered and clunky with villains, we didn't know how the outcome was going to be. I mean, we've seen it time and time again with movies when you just kind of add a bunch of crap just thrown at you and it just gets, you know, way too messy and way too clunky once again. But I think the Avengers films definitely have proved over the years that you can do that with 10, 20 characters and still focus on certain moments and feels from certain characters and just have an overall great experience. And next up for my pros was seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Wow. Once again, audience reactions were just going crazy. I think once Ned opened up that portal and kind of brought through Andrew Garfield and he ripped off that mask, people were going nuts about it. And I'll be honest, I haven't even seen the Amazing Spider-Man films. I've seen clips here and there. It was just one of those things, I think at the moment where I'm like, you're rebooting Spider-Man and it's not, Tobey Maguire is nowhere to be found. That ain't my Spider-Man. So I think that's why I kind of avoided that. But I think seeing his integral part to this movie makes us really want to go back and watch the Amazing Spider-Mans because he has heart. He may not look the part, and I think that's the whole thing about these Spider-Man multiverses. We all kind of judged, Tobey Maguire was too old. Andrew Garfield was old, but not as old as Tobey Maguire, so they're kind of getting there. And then we got Tom Holland, who's an actual teenager, and he looks like a teenager. So I think that's kind of where we're all at mentally once we're kind of judging our Spider-Mans, but they all hold nostalgic weight to each one of us. So I will say Andrew Garfield definitely did impress me in this film, and I want to go back and watch his films. Now, jumping to Tobey Maguire, who we got immediately after, I wish they kind of would have let it marinate a little bit before we saw Tobey Maguire, because he just kind of popped in and was like, oh, hey, what's going on? I just stepped through this portal. I think if you kind of would have been suited up as well, we all would have been cheering a little bit harder, but it's so hard. And I'll throw this in my con section, but I'll talk about it now. The spoilers, guys. The spoilers are what kind of made me lose the hype a little bit as the days were kind of rolling on. The spoilers for this movie were terrible. I know it's not shouldn't really be in the con category because it has nothing to do with this movie. It has to do with the marketing and the leaks and people just, I understand the excitement, but there is, there are certain people out there that will just watch a movie, record all the clips, and purposely troll the internet to upset the fanboys and just upset the fans in general that are going to go see this movie. I mean, you want to be excited and surprised whenever you go into these movies that you've really been waiting for such a long time. I think this was probably one of the biggest films that I had anticipated for the year. So knowing that certain characters were going to be in there, or just opening, my phone and it popping up literally on my homepage of YouTube as a recommended video, knowing one of the spoilers, which was Tobey Maguire, I was like, I know they said he wasn't going to be in there, but everybody was like, no, he's just saying that. Like, you kind of know that, but now I knew that it was confirmed a day before. So you guys understand what I'm saying? I lost excitement just a little bit, but I still had fun with it because I wanted to see, okay, now that I know he's in here, how is he going to mesh with the other Spider-Mans and the villains and the rest of the characters that we get along the way? And I thought they did a perfect job, even though Tobey Maguire has definitely aged, and I think they even acknowledged that in the movie, which is a little weird to me because it's supposed to be the moment in time that they were grabbed in was the moment in time that their films were being made. So Tobey Maguire's would have been in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, as well as Garfield in the 2010s, but it looked like Tobey Maguire aged so much. And I know he's not that old as old as Willem Dafoe, but they could have maybe de-aged him a little bit. Like, can you shed off 10 years or something like that to make it look like he didn't age, whatsoever? He was in great shape. He was in great shape. I will just say that. And he fit the suit well. They all looked great in their suit. And that was another fanfare service moment when they were all swinging together. I teared up. I could not believe I was watching this. I could not believe that we finally got something that I think the fans were begging for such a long time, especially since the introduction to the multiverse, with Miles Morales and all these, other hints at it along the way in the last 5 years or so. I think we got a great product, and I was just happy. I was like a kid in a candy store just staring at this large screen. And yeah, I get emotional at stuff like this. And, it's just because it's like, wow, we live in a time where we can see this type of stuff, especially if you've seen movies from 25 years ago and they're superhero movies like this. They look like crap. They look like utter crap. So to see, high budget movies where they're actually taking their time to perfect these movies and CGI and these worlds that they're creating that don't exist, it's awesome. It's really awesome to see that execution. And jumping to another pro of mine was the scene of the death of Aunt May. I knew once they started focusing so much on Aunt May, once they were having that whole scuffle with Green Goblin, which was an awesome scene, by the way, his kind of internal evilness just kind of turned on and he went just full Willem Dafoe on him. That was touching. That was emotional. But once again, once they started focusing on her so much and the dramatic music, I'm like, something's going to happen to her. I knew it. I knew something was going to happen to her. And then she got hit with his, board or whatever he rides. I don't know exactly what it's called. But once she gets hit, I was like, wait a minute. That's the device. That's the thing that killed Green Goblin. So there has to be a spike or something on it. That's the only thing I would kind of tweak a little bit. Yeah, they did show blood under Aunt May, but if we would have saw kind of the blood on screen, I thought there would have been a little more of an impactful moment, especially from the crowd, like, because I think some people really thought she was going to recover from this. I did. Once she got up and was walking around, I was like, okay, she's not injured that bad, but we got a little fake out and that's fine. Something a little different from Marvel maybe, but I thought that was definitely an emotional scene. I teared up. There was people sitting next to me that were actually bawling, crying. I could hear them sniffling and whatnot, and that's totally fine. Once again, we're invested in these characters over the years, especially this Tom Holland Spider-Man. And even though they are all different over the last couple of decades, I think we each hold an appreciation for each one of them. This trilogy of Tom Holland's Peter Parker has definitely stuck to me. And I will say this, I think for the first time ever on camera, that Tom Holland is definitely my Spider-Man. There's something about his emotional depth and these characters involved. Even with Happy, Happy showed a relationship with Aunt May on camera just for, a brief moment. But we fell in love with these characters that are supposed to be secondary characters. No matter how much you show them on screen, I think Aunt May's death hit a lot of us. She was important. She wanted Peter to embrace his inner strength. With great power comes great responsibility. And once that was uttered from her, oh, my heart melted. Because immediately I remembered Uncle Ben. And then they talked about it with Tobey. And it's just like they had this connection. And then you have the connection with the audience. So it's really cool to see all the nods, all of the, just throwbacks to all of the villains, as well as our Spider-Mans. I thought it was perfectly executed. And once again, I didn't know how they were going to do it with this many characters, but they seemed to pull it off. Now, jumping to that final fight scene, I've heard a lot of mixed reviews from my cinephile colleagues, just pretty much saying that this was an utter mess of a final fight. And that's totally fine. That's their opinion. You guys let me know in the comments down below. Was it a mess? Did you guys enjoy it? Was it lackluster? I think to me, it was just enough. It really was messy in the fact that there's a lot of things happening all at once. You have to realize you're focusing on maybe, I think, 6 or 7 characters at a time, including the Spider-Mans. So there's a lot of things going on, as well as Ned and MJ kind of coming through. So there's a lot going on. So that being said, it is one setting. It is different once you kind of got these one setting movies as opposed to things kind of just colliding in a city where you have an audience watching. I think that's kind of where the Avengers win when it comes to those final battle scenes, is because a lot of them take place when there's a lot of people around. So pandemonium just seems crazier. But this is taking place on the iconic Statue of Liberty, which I thought it was cool. They showed the actual shield being added to the Statue of Liberty. I thought that was insane, but okay, it's a cool added thing. But back to the fight, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a pretty entertaining fight, I will say that. I think honestly the most enjoyable part about that final fight was the 3 Spider-Mans coming together as a team, as a unit, because Tom Holland's Spider-Man already had that Avengers knowledge, so he kind of added that leadership role to the group, to the trio. They even explain, he goes, hey, I was in the Avengers. And they're like, cool, who is that? I thought that was really funny. Some of this dialogue and writing was funny, by the way. I didn't even mention that. That was definitely a pro of mine. And once again, it was cool kind of seeing them come together, because initially when they all kind of run out there and just go after the villains, there's no structure. There's no structure whatsoever. And they're trying to just pretty much depower, stabbing them with this serum to kind of just restrain their power or get rid of their power completely, so they're able to send them home and they're not having to fight for their life while doing it. So I did like seeing that structure once again, and I like seeing them play off each other. It was amazing sight to see once again all 3 Spider-Mans, all 3 different suits swinging at one point in a frame. I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. And finally, for my pro is gonna be Tom Holland's Peter Parker letting go of MJ and Ned. I did tear up. I did tear up for the fact that he did not want to put his friends and the woman that he loved, I mean, because they did say, I love you to each other, you know, and that was, oh, that was a scene where I was like, say it. And she did. And I was like, you're still teenagers, but you've gone through so much traumatic events that you have to, I mean, there's a level of love there that's unmatched. And I love the realism to that. And they showed it on screen. And for him to hear that and then weeks later let that go, it really shows you like the power of a person that Tom Holland's Peter Parker has become. And that really just left a question mark in my head. Yeah, we've got the announcement of another trilogy after this with Tom Holland. Where does he go from here? Where does Tom Holland's Peter Parker go from here? It's not going to include MJ or Ned. And that's the thing that kind of, you know, is sad, but it's also bittersweet at the same time. He didn't want to put them through those events again. You know, once he realized that there was a cut on her head that healed, and she's like, oh yeah, it's healing, but it hurt or whatever. He paused for a moment and was like, I'm not putting her through that again. You know, I'm not putting Ned through this again. And that really shows a true friend, you know, and true love. And I really did like that. I mean, you know, maybe I'm thinking too deep into this, but I really get invested with these characters, and I like that choice that he took. I will just say that. It was a very, very hard choice, but he took it. And then where do we go from here? Now we have a fork in the road of where he can go from here. So those are my pros, guys. And I know I kept it pretty long when it comes to my pros. So you guys probably know that I don't have that many cons. If you guys are checking the remainder of the video, I don't have that many cons, but I'll just go over them right now. But before I do, make sure to hit that big thumbs up to like the video if you guys haven't already. And make sure to hit that subscribe and bell notification if you haven't already. All right, guys, let's just get directly into my cons for Spider-Man No Way Home. Starting off with, how the hell can Ned open up portals? I mean, I understand he has the rings from Doctor Strange, but you would think he would have to obtain a little more inner power, inner strength, or inner something. He's an average kid. And just because he has the rings that they stole from Doctor Strange, he can now just wave his hand like this and open up a portal. That was a bit silly to me, especially when he did it like 5 or 6 times. I was like, all right, now you're kind of just, a portal has to open, but, you know, who can open it? And it's just one of those things that just, you know, I understand these are fiction movies, but that was a little bit over the top, and they could have worked on it, tightened it up a little bit to make it a little bit of a better explanation for me. And with that, another con of mine, some of the scenes could have been trimmed in the Sanctum Sanctorum just a little bit when they do the whole Scooby-Doo investigating, like Doctor Strange called it. It just felt a little bit unnecessary, and I know throughout this trilogy, there have been a couple of scenes that I called extended. I mean, they could have just definitely been trimmed because they didn't offer too much to the overall movie. It was just more banter and just character dialogue. That's all that was going on. They could have trimmed the fat just a hair. Just a hair when it came to some of those scenes. Also, jumping to probably one of my biggest cons of this film was Electro, Sandman, and Lizard. Oh my God. I never thought I would care about villains less. These were not menacing villains whatsoever. I think Sandman, because of the trilogy that we got with Tobey, was probably the one that he had a cool backstory. He had a daughter and stuff like that. He looked amazing, by the way. In this one, he looked amazing, especially compared to Spider-Man 3. Oh my God. That was cool for back then. Even for back then, that was cool to us as kids, or younger. But in this one, he looks amazing. When he's just standing there and pieces of sand are falling off him, or when he sits on the couch and it just, a pile of sand just falls off him, I thought that was really, really CGI amazing. But they were very, very forgettable. And I think because Lizard and I know Electro were in the Amazing Spider-Man, which I haven't seen once again, I think that's the reason why I didn't care for these characters too much. The fact that our introduction to Electro, half the time he was in a fireman suit, not menacing whatsoever. I mean, you could say the same for Willem Dafoe. I mean, he was just like in a hoodie and tattered, clothes and whatnot. his demeanor, maybe it's the acting that comes along with it, because Jamie Foxx just seemed like a regular guy that had powers. Willem Dafoe seemed like he was battling mania in his head, two split personalities, and I totally bought it, just like I did back in the day with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. But I didn't give a shit about Electro in this movie. I didn't give a shit about Sandman, and I definitely didn't give a shit about the Lizard. And last but not least, for my cons, guys, has to be Flash Thompson. Oh my God, we just binge watched Homecoming and Far From Home. This was the least they used him in this film, and when they did, it was pretty cringeworthy. I mean, I understand he's trying to show off that he knows Spider-Man. He even says he's Spider-Man's best friend, which we all know that he ain't. He's just trying to get the clout. And I mean, we didn't even see him on the phone that much. I mean, through the whole Far From Home film, he was live streaming everything. In this film, he didn't really do that. We saw him with blonde hair. Whoop-de freaking do. We just didn't really care for him. At least I didn't care for him that much. They didn't show him too much. Yeah, he got into MIT, and that was the only, kind of integral part he had to these characters, was that he was going to talk to the dean or whoever, the person of admissions, so they could possibly get MJ, Ned, and Peter Parker, Tom Holland's Peter Parker once again, into MIT. That's it. He was a throwaway character in this movie. And it's weird because I hear that in the comics, and I'm not a comic nerd, but I hear in the comics he's a huge part of the Spider-Verse. So what the hell? Like, I understand it's another character for you guys to focus on, but in this movie, he was completely throwaway, even more than the villains, I thought. All right, guys, so those are my overall pros and con thoughts for Spider-Man No Way Home. But stick around, I'm going to be talking about the post-credit scenes. But before I do, my final score for Spider-Man No Way Home has to be a solid 4 out of 5. I really did enjoy this one. And if I had to rank this one in the trilogy, I will say this is my favorite in the trilogy. And I never thought it would be, just based on how many characters we would have to focus on in this movie. They did a pretty good job. It was overall entertaining, fun, very, very fast paced, but there was a lot of character development along the way with people that we weren't introduced to in the previous films. And saying that No Way Home was my favorite, where do I rank the other two? Now, I had just mentioned a moment ago that I did this past week binge watch Homecoming and Far From Home. So that being said, if No Way Home is my favorite in the trilogy, it has to go with Homecoming next, and Far From Home being third. And that's tough to say, guys, because I love all the movies equally. It's just that rewatching Far From Home, even though I love the Mysterio character so much, that was my favorite part of the movie, there was just so much added clunky dialogue along the way that was very quirky, especially when Peter Parker jumps up and shoots that drone from the bus. That was extremely unnecessary and wacky and dumb. I will just say that. All right, Flix Talkers, now let's get into the post-credit scenes. We got two. We got a mid-credit as well as an after-credit teaser trailer. So let's go over the first one. Eddie Brock and Venom. I had said it. If you guys follow the channel on my live streams, I said it. With Flix Talkers in the chat, I had called it. I said, even though, and this is a spoiler for Venom, Let There Be Carnage, even though we had seen in that post-credit scene kind of the tie-in with Spider-Man No Way Home, I knew Venom was not going to show up in this movie. They were going to add a Venom post-credit scene into this film, and I was right. I was absolutely right. I know a lot of other people were on board with that as well. Some people were saying, no, he's going to be in the movie. Or some people were saying that the post-credit scene might be something different. I'm so glad that we got to see a little more. It just seemed like an extended scene onto Venom, Let There Be Carnage, which only came out a few months ago. So that's very, very cool, especially if you're following these movies. It's fresh in your mind. But the part that mattered the most was Eddie Brock, a drunk Eddie Brock, by the way, so who knows if he'll remember this in the morning, is that Eddie Brock says he's going to go to New York to talk to Peter Parker. And secondly, we get to see that drop of symbiote on the counter left in Mexico. I believe they were in Cancun, Mexico, or somewhere in Mexico, which is a big question mark for us. Who's going to get that symbiote attached to them and who are they going to turn into? That was cool. And our final post-credit scene being the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness teaser trailer. I believe this is going to be a teaser trailer because it didn't look that edited. It just looked like footage that they had already had on deck, ready to please all the Marvel fans. And I gotta say, wow, we got so many characters kind of coming back. It looked like we had some new monsters he's fighting. But once again, it looks like this was filmed right after No Way Home. And I like that they're kind of doing that. Throughout the years, we've had so many, Spider-Man's, in Avengers Infinity War or Endgame, and, different things are happening. So, the solo movies are coming after it, and it's like, whoa, pump the brakes. That's why this one was cool, once again, is that this movie started off directly after Far From Home, and that's what I liked. You don't really have to worry too much about the shows or the in-between movies. This one kind of just left off directly after it. So the Doctor Strange 2 teaser trailer, I thought it was awesome. We got to see Wanda once again. That's why I'm wearing this shirt. And I love her character, especially after watching the show earlier in the year. I thought it was fantastic, as well as seeing a character that is being mirrored by Doctor Strange. Now, once again, I don't know the comics too much. I know that this is like an evil Doctor Strange. He's fighting himself. I don't really know exactly what to think about that. You guys let me know in the comments below. Is it Mephisto? A lot of people are going towards Mephisto because that character does kind of tie into the Spideyverse. So you guys let me know. Once again, I'm not versed that well in the comics, so I can't tell you guys what's coming, but I know a lot of people were saying that it was Mephisto in this trailer. So I was really happy that we got that, because I don't think we've gotten a teaser trailer in a Marvel post-credit scene movie ever. So I could be wrong about that, but I don't think we have. I did enjoy it nonetheless, and I overall enjoyed the movie. Once again, a 4 out of 5. But you guys let me know your thoughts. Did I miss anything that you guys enjoyed in Spider-Man No Way Home? If I did, make sure to drop it in the comments below. And before you guys leave, make sure to like the video if you guys did appreciate my thoughts and appreciate these videos that I'm bringing to you. And if you guys aren't already, make sure to hit that subscribe and bell notification down below to join the Flix Talk family today and always be alerted about future videos like this. All right, guys, till next one, I'm gone. Peace.